Well, the Supreme Court has now ruled that it's illegal to consider race in college admissions. Now, most Americans agree with last week's decision. A recent CBS News poll found that 70% of Americans oppose race being used as a factor in admissions. And even 60% of Democrats oppose race as a factor, according to a New York Times poll. But there was a backlash to the ruling. My old friend Stephen A. Smith had a lot to say about the decision.
Here's where I get ticked off. I get ticked off that white America gets to sit back and act like they're innocent in all of the things that have been transpiring to the point where it ignited their furor to such a degree that they felt the need to oppose such things. The iniquities that have taken place in this country against minority communities, who exacted that? Who displayed that? Who exercised those actions? Who were the instigators and perpetrators of all of that? Who was that exactly? Wasn't that white America? I think it was.
Stephen A. Smith, the host of the Stephen A. Smith Show and First Take on ESPN, joins us now. Stephen A., great to see you, man.
What's going on, buddy? How you doing, man?
You want me to just go right at that clip? Is that how we should do this? Should we just start right there?
Feel free.
Okay.
There's
no such thing.
Let's go. I'm here.
I know you are. The problem is, Stephen A., in truth, when it comes to justice, there is no such thing as black America and white America. There are only individuals.
Okay.
And so when you assign culpability to individuals of the past, to individuals of today, there's simply nothing to hold anyone accountable for. Why do I pay the price for the sins of the past and you reap the benefits in the case of the affirmative action? I'm not saying you had affirmative action, but you as a black man would reap the benefits of affirmative action for the sins committed on someone of the past. We are only, in the end, Stephen A., individuals.
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, I get where you're coming from, and I can understand how you would look at it that way. You have to respect the fact that I have a different cultural background, a different experience than you, and I might feel a bit differently about it. What I would tell you is this. There's so many people, and the people that have been supportive of the Supreme Court's latest ruling are of the mindset that blacks were getting an unfair advantage. What black people would contend to you is that it wasn't an unfair advantage. Remember, race was a consideration, one of many considerations that would be taken into the equation when you talk about college admissions, and I think ultimately diversity, equity, and inclusion is next, personally, when you think about some of the things that have been taking place in corporate America. But it wasn't that. It was an effort to sort of make an effort to even the playing scales to some degree because of the iniquities exacted against the African-American community in this country. It wasn't about giving them an advantage. It was about highlighting the fact that they were discriminated, meaning we were discriminated against at that particular moment in time. And that's why the policy was instituted to begin with. So when folks are walking around acting as if there is a reason to celebrate, and I'm looking at folks that are feeling like somehow, some way, they've been shortchanged. My mentality is, wait a minute, the policies were implemented to begin with because the African-American community was being shortchanged, and they were being denied the same privileges or the same opportunities that were accorded to white folks in America.
What I would say to that is you do not solve past discrimination by present or future discrimination. And there were certainly injustices under the banner of affirmative action inflicted upon individuals, whether or not they be white or Asian American. In Harvard, in the situation at Harvard, an African-American student in the top 50% of his academic class, Stephen A., had just as good a chance as an Asian student or a white student in the top 10% of their class. Is that just discrimination?
No. And by the way, if you know, and I'm sure you did listen to my podcast, and I appreciate you doing so. If you recall, I did not say, you know what, I did not say that it wasn't discrimination. I acknowledged the fact you didn't hear me speak against, you know, anyone from the Asian community that had brought that case to the justices. I understood where they were coming from. My argument was against folks in white America that was saying, even the, you know, presidential candidate Donald Trump talking about now we get back to a merit, you know, a society based on merit, ignoring what brought affirmative action policies into play to begin with. We have people in white America acting as if they don't know how it came about. Okay. So if somebody from the Asian community or the Latino community, they had an issue and they felt that they were denied an opportunity, that's a different argument than white America coming up and saying, we don't feel that we've been treated fairly in all of this. When the unfairness was exacted by white folks in America.
Well, that's where you and I go full circle and get a little bit stuck in the mud, because I will refer to talking about individuals. Individuals, whether or not they be white or Asian, can be the victims of injustice and discrimination. But I do want to ask you a sincere question. In the 1970s, when the program of affirmative action was implemented, Stephen A., at that time, the Supreme Court of the United States said there would be a day when it would no longer be required. When they re-upped it in 2003, they anticipated another 25 years of affirmative action. Well, we came just short of that. It's been 21 years since that decision was made at the Supreme Court. The question is, even if you're making up for past sins, Stephen A., when does it come to an end? When do we stop discriminating on the basis of race?
When people in positions of power have proven that they're exercising fairness, come hella high water. It's really, really that simple. I'm so glad that you asked that question.
But that's
because
impossible
it is that
to define.
Again, when you're looking at numbers, for example, why did Yale in the 70s sit up there and say, we want 10% of our student populace to be made up of minorities? You know why? Because they knew without those rules, those laws in place, they didn't anticipate that that would be allowed. In today's corporate America, you still have folks. You have black folks being paid less than white folks. You have black women being paid less than white women. You have white women obviously deserving a lot of opportunities that they obviously richly deserve. They're getting paid less than white men. Everywhere you turn, there's a level of unfairness that's being exercised.
But you're ascribing all those differences. The only thing that changes that is the law as opposed to somebody's conscience. But you're ascribing all those differences to race when there's so many different contributing factors into why corporate America may look a certain way. You and I both love sports. We both debated in sports. I could play turnabout as fair play and go, why aren't there more white NBA players? That must be discrimination. But we both know the answer is because merit has dictated who's in the NBA. And whatever's happening in society, and I would never, Stephen A., I would never sit here and say every decision made is purely based upon merit. But we aspire to that. We aspire to that.
Right.
And I think that the Supreme Court's decision has been a big leap forward in getting to where we judge things based upon merit.
Well, you would say that, and I would say to you that the power structure in the United States of America is still predominantly white. And so as a result, what white America is asking you to do is ultimately to trust that your heart is going to be in the right place. And there are a plethora of people throughout minority communities in this country who would challenge that and would say, no, we don't necessarily believe that to be the case, which is why we need the laws to help us. When you bring up sports, and you and I have argued back and forth as friends and brothers, talking about the world of sports and some of the iniquities that have taken place, you can bring up the NBA, for example. I can point to something called the meritocracy because I see their performance on the court just as much as you do. There isn't some curtain, there isn't some proverbial glass ceiling. Yeah. We're literally witnessing it. But when we look at the NFL, for example, the Rooney Rule was still in existence. This is the #1 professional sports league in this country. Why is the Rooney Rule still in existence? Because we've seen one opportunity after another where capable, qualified black individuals were bypassed because of the system that was in place, primarily run by white individuals who asked us to trust them, but then proved they weren't worthy of the trust that they requested. Yeah. And so those are the kind of challenges we have to deal with as a country, and there's just no way around that. The only way we can make it better is people like yourself and myself talking about it honestly and openly.
I agree. And I will say that I think that the mistake that we often make, and where you and I find our debate, is whether or not we ascribe all those differences to the big factor being race. Listen, next time we're together, I want to have a conversation with you about Clarence Thomas. He's one of the most amazing black men in the history of the United States of America, and I do not feel like you're giving him sufficient credit to anyone. But we'll get there. We don't have to do it right now. Before we go, let's stay to many people in America. Before we go, let's stay on the note of sports. Who wins in the fight? You have analyzed fights, Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg?
Man, that's a tough one. Elon Musk just looks like a weird individual. He's just different. I mean, he's a big dude, though. He's considerably bigger than Zuckerberg. Zuckerberg's a small guy, but they say he's been studying Brazilian jiu-jitsu. And in the case of Elon Musk, all he said is that I'm just going to be a big body. I'm going to lay on him and maneuver the move called the walrus, where I just lay on him and do nothing. If I got to bet on one or the other, I would bet on the jiu-jitsu artist. But Elon Musk is a big dude, and if he falls on Mark Zuckerberg, I mean, who knows? I don't know. I'll go with Zuckerberg. I'll go with the underdog. I'll go with Zuckerberg.
We have the tail of the tape on the screen when you're talking, and I'll be real as well. Elon Musk at 6'1" doesn't look like 187. He looks like he's about a 210, which would be a significant advantage. Yeah, but I'm going to go with the guy who is trained. I'm going to go with Zuckerberg as well.
That's what I'm doing. This is not boxing. If it was boxing, I would pick Musk. If it's Zuckerberg, I mean, again, you're a martial artist, you got a chance.
Always love it, man, even and because we disagree. Thank you, Stephen A. Smith.
That's right. My pleasure, bro.
All right.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.